like to welcome everybody to another edition of the Major Music Lounge. And today we are joined by the J. Henry. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing very well. Yeah, the comes from the fact that J. Henry was already taken. So I
Oh
had to
man.
I had to get clever with my name.
The main J. Henry. That's who we are.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Yeah, it was
exactly.
definitely a pleasure to have you on because been following each other for quite a while now, and I've been really impressed with a lot of the content that I saw from you, and just seeing you're also a fellow machine user, so
That's
definitely
right.
gonna dig into some of that as well. But tell us a little bit about, who is Thee JHENRY, like where you're from, how long you've been creating music.
Yeah, Thee JHENRY. So that's a more recent moniker that I've taken on. think- do I call you D dot?
D dot.
D dot. Okay,
Yeah.
just making sure. Yeah, so that's a recent moniker I took on. Before that, I mean, I started creating in like middle school or something,
Okay.
or even before that. I've always had this sort of desire to create and specifically create in the realm of music. It was always like a producer, artist, full stack sort of creator, if you will, that I was interested in. I think that's just because I think part of it is I'm just curious and fascinated by the entire process. And so I just want to be a part of every single piece of it.
Yeah.
Um, and part of it is, control freak nature. And I just can't give it up. I'm like, why would I give it to someone else when I could do it myself? Right. It takes a little bit more time. And I'm sure we'll get into that. But I'm from Eastern Washington, a little small town called Grandview. I'm sure no one's ever heard of it, except people from Grandview. Even people in the neighboring town, they're like, "Where? Where are you from?" But I've been in Seattle for about 14 years.
Okay. All right. Man, that's kind of reflecting on, why you started creating. I could kind of relate as well. Initially when I got into creating, it was mainly just beats. But
Yeah,
there was always a curiosity of, what if I became an artist? And what happened was well, I've been living in Dallas since 2004. I'm originally from Lafayette, Louisiana, small
mm,
town as well. But when I got to Dallas, I linked up with a couple of other artists, and I was making beats for them, and that's when I kind of decided, because we used to go to studios all the time. Like we used to practically at least a couple of times out of the week be in the studio. And
mm,
it was then I really decided, I hang around these guys, they're rappers. Why not just try my hand at it? And that was
yeah,
really around 2007, and here we are now, 2023. So it's you're right, in some way I want to be involved in every part of the process, from production to engineering even, and then songwriting and being an artist. And I love it all. It sometimes gets a little difficult, I would say, balancing all of those things. Especially like I try to push myself, if not every day, mostly as much as I can throughout the week. I try to make a beat as often as I can. So I can definitely relate to you on that front. Who would you say are some of your or some of the people that have influenced you to become an artist and a producer?
um, yeah. I mean, first of all, I'm gonna applaud you. One beat a day. I mean, that's crazy. I can't even. I mean, I also work full time and I go to school part time because I'm getting my master's. And yeah, I can't keep up with the one beat. So you got a leg up on me for sure.
Appreciate
Um, so who influenced me? I don't know. That's a very interesting question. I think I'm very influenced by um more like themes, right? I was
it.
always
Okay.
influenced by this concept of like the universe and fate or destiny. And I think as I grew older, it sort of evolved more into sort of those things, but in the guise of love and like how does love manifest. So I think a lot of my inspiration comes from that. But I posted a Instagram reel today, and the the content was not about love, unless you could see it as like love for myself, I guess. But um, so I'd say first and foremost, it was always like trying to personify these experiences I was having growing up, and then as I was more of an adult with the universe and things of that nature. Um, in terms of like artists, I mean, I grew up with such an eclectic background. I think a lot of people will say that, but if you pull up my Spotify daily mix, it will uh, back that up. Um, like I grew up a lot with like Rage Against the Machine because my dad was a huge rocker and he grew up in that era. But luckily, like Rage has a lot of hip hop elements. Not only is the lead singer rapping on a lot of the songs, but I mean the way that they play the drums or the bass is just very gritty, like hip hop. So I think that heavily influences how I think about those elements. Um, I mean, I also loved one of my first albums was Dr. Dre Chronic
Yeah.
2001. And I mean, that heavily influences how I think about music and instrumentation and
Yeah.
like and mixing, right? Like Dr. Dre, I think is very widely known. If you're into music, you know Dr. Dre knows how to mix drums like really well, where you hear the kick in your chest and the snare makes your neck snap, right? It's just like and I think that heavily influenced me as well. Like when I first started creating, I wanted to create beats like Dr. Dre,
Yeah.
probably, I would say. And then it just expanded from that. Like Lupe Fiasco, Food and Liquor, one of my favorite albums. Kanye West, of course. Like I grew up when he was sort of becoming a big thing. Um, so that's probably from the production side. And then
Yeah.
lyrically, I mean, there's like a whole nother answer right there, but I'll stop since I've been talking a lot.
Oh no, no doubt. I mean, that's some good stuff there. Rage Against the Machine, Dr. Dre. Um, I mean, Dre is one of my influences as well. I mean, that was a great time. You bring up Chronic 2001, and I'm, telling my age with this one, but I was, I think, a junior or senior in high school, but
Okay.
I remember like we used to go to these basketball games and they would have the CD playing in the gym and
Oh, nice.
everybody would get hyped before the game and even before that All Eyes on Me, Tupac,
Mm,
that's
so
like
good.
one of my favorite produced albums of all time, like. And I mean, Dre, I watched this YouTube video years ago and he was just talking about like how he does and has always, for the most part, did a lot of his engineering, but talked about really like the importance of hearing every little detail in the mix. And that's what I kind of took with me all of those years to try and, you can there will never be another Dre, but if you can take a little something from him and apply it to what you do, that's always a plus. So, Dre, yeah, definitely an inspiration to me. And, I'm glad he did come out with that Compton album. That was years ago, but that was pretty good as well. Because I know he was talking about a sequel to Chronic 2001. That was almost 20 years. And then we finally got that Compton album. So I really like that, man. Kind of
Did
going
you,
back,
did you like the Compton album? What did you think?
I thought it was all right.
Yeah.
It's definitely like I would probably say like if I have to rate Dre's three albums, I'll put Chronic 2001, I'll put
Mm,
the original Chronic, and then I'll put Compton right after that.
yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
I just thought, I mean, while it did sound like a Dre album, it to me it was just different. I don't know what it
Mm,
was. I can't quite put my finger on it, but it just wasn't. I don't know if just experiences, or it seemed more like, and even the other ones too, to a degree, like Chronic 2001 was him, but it also had a lot of features. I think this one,
Mm,
Compton, had way too many features, but it
mm,
was still a solid album.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, you're not gonna knock it. It's Dr. Dre, right? It's gonna sound great. It may
Yeah,
not be the best, but it's gonna sound great.
it was in fact a soundtrack to that movie that came out
Yeah.
with it.
Mhm.
So yeah.
Yeah.
So kind of cycling back to being an artist and producer, just speaking from my personal experiences, just like you were mentioning earlier, like it's a lot that you have to do, writing songs, making beats, working 40 hours a week, and then everything else you got going in life. Like, for me, I kind of like to usually think ahead, like in terms of whatever, because my schedule shifts with my job. Some days I might get off early to where I have enough time to work on music. Sometimes I may get off too late, but I still now I would say I get about an hour and a half while I'm at work at some point to create during breaks and things like that. But I do utilize that time as well, which kind of helps me stay on the content and being able to upload so often. But how do you balance it all? Being a producer, being an artist, dropping content, just doing normal things in life outside of music. How do you balance just being a creator and, everything away from music?
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely a process that I had to learn along the way and get better at. Have you heard of time boxing?
No, no.
Yeah. So time boxing is sort of this concept where within one particular day, and I think typically you're going to extend it out to a week, right? And you'll have kind of this view of the week. And within that week, you're going to have boxes of time. And you can have like 30-minute chunks or 15-minute chunks if you're trying to get really granular with how you're going to manage your time. But you're going to have these boxes. And then it's just an exercise of going through and saying, okay, I know I want 7 hours of sleep because that's where I'm going to function well. I'm going to feel great. So that goes in first. And then I know I have to work 35, 45 hours a week. Right. So I need to put that in and I relatively know what hours or time frames that's going to be in. So I do that. And then from there, it's just going through what are my priorities? What do I want to get done? What do I know I need to have accomplished this week? And then you just kind of allocate time for it and see where you're at and see like, do I have way too many things that I'm trying to do and I need to cut back, or do I actually kind of have some buffer time and I can just relax at some point? So I'd say that's sort of the first tactic I use. Um, I work full time as a data scientist, so I'm very like data and analytics driven. And one of the first things, one of the first like tenets of that world is if you don't measure it, you can't improve it. And so when it comes to time, if I was sitting there thinking, oh, I need to manage my time better, well, I need to measure it first, right? And that's one way that I can measure it. So that's the first. And then the other one is kind of going back to priorities, right? I think we live in a society where it's very easy to get wrapped up in instant gratification and like all these distractions, right? TikTok, Netflix, your iPhone, something else, I don't know, drinking. Um, and so just, it comes down to what are your priorities? And at the end of this week, at the end of this year, or at the end of your life, like what do you want to look back and say you accomplished? And if watching 100 Netflix movies isn't one of those things, like maybe one should watch less Netflix. Um, Not to say I don't watch Netflix, I don't go on TikTok or whatever. It's just they're not a priority, and so they don't eat up a lot of my time because I'm very cognizant of the fact that I'm watching it when I do, and I'm like, okay, it's been 10 minutes, I need to stop. I need to go do something else. So I'd say that's the other thing. And then third, kind of like what you were saying, it's finding the time in between. priorities where you can create, right? Like I'm a huge fan of walking during my lunch breaks and just enjoying the outside and stepping away from the screen. And
Yeah.
during that time, I often write most of my stuff because I don't need anything to write. I just need to think about it, right? Um, I can somewhat create music, but I'm just not as good because I grew up doing a lot of sampling based music, right? I mean, loving hip hop. And so it's harder to like walk and think of a sample that I want to chop and how I want to chop it. I'm just not that skilled. And so a lot of the music creation happens when I'm sitting down at the computer. And so I think that's why I write more than I produce. But yeah, that's how I think about all of that and balancing it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's some very great points. I wholeheartedly agree, kind of the second point especially. Like I feel like as a creator, you're gonna like whatever you invest your time in is whatever you value the most. And if you don't make time for what you really want to do in life, I guess you could say to some degree, because I know we all have our jobs, but at the same time, music can be a vehicle that can potentially take you a lot of different places. If, I guarantee that, most people that are creating and that are independent artists, um, like if a label called and said, "Hey, we're gonna pay you $1 million uh to sign with us and record an album," and whatever the case may be, I guarantee you they would leave their job. And at that point, it's not about the love for what you do. It's about what you can put on the table. But we all go through it. I'm a big sports fan, and football and basketball season is coming up, and there are times even I'm in the lab, I got my iPad right next to me, muted, but I'm making beats or I'm recording a song right here. And I'm kind of multitasking, but I'm still getting it done. And that other way, even like at work, you mentioned sometimes like you just start thinking of lyrics and you might do a lot of your songwriting. And that's kind of funny that you say that because I work in sales and technology to some degree. But like there are times when I'm just standing up and it might be a slow day at work and I'm waiting for another customer to come up to me. But while I'm waiting for that customer, I'm just kind of daydreaming, thinking of lyrics. And then I just think of like two or four bars or something that I gotta type in my iPhone and it's off to the races at that point. So I've seen it go both ways for me. And when I have it happen like that sometimes where I even write the song before I actually make the beat. And I may have like a good 16 bars or so, and I build a beat around that. I might
Mhm,
record it or how I want it, however it feels with the beat that I want to make. And I may experiment with a couple of beats, but yeah, you're absolutely right. An artist is going to invest their time where they see it fit the most on top of and don't get it also twisted in something else you said that I like about measuring, I guess, what you're doing, because a lot of
mhm,
artists are working, a lot of creators are working, but it's not productive.
mhm,
And it's just finding whatever's productive, because you want to grow your brand, you want to do all these things, find shows. Some people want to get placements. There's a lot of moving parts when it comes to being a creator. So
mhm.
great points in everything you said. And I want to kind of transition, to
Okay,
talking a little bit about Machine. I noticed
okay,
you're a fellow Machine user. Now, have you
yeah.
been using Machine since you started making beats, or do you kind of dabble in a couple of different programs or apps?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely dabble. Um, I'll start out by saying, like, I've always wanted an MPC. I mean, all the greats use an MPC on anything, any album cover where they're gonna have a drum machine, like, it's an MPC, it's not a machine. Exactly. It's just it's the same exact technology. It just looks and feels and means something different, I think, to the like to hip hop music especially, right? Because so many great songs were created on the MPC. And so um I just landed on the machine at like a really good deal. Somebody was trying to get rid of it. I'm like, why go spend $1,000 on an MPC, the newest one, when I could get this one for 75 bucks? I just need a controller because I work in the DAW, right? Um, so that's kind of how that started. But I went through progression in terms of how I would make my beats. I started in FL Studio. It was all point and click, right?
Yeah.
Those beats sucked. They were not good. I listened to them today and I'm like, no wonder nobody listened to me or wanted to rap on these. Like they were not good. But I don't know, I was like in high school or something. Um, and then eventually it was, you progress. It's like, okay, I'm a point and click. It's like, well, I want to play chords and I want to like feel around. I don't want to like click around. And so then you get like a MIDI keyboard and then I was able to play on that. I do actually prefer, I think if I'm just like generally, I prefer a MIDI keyboard. And I have one, it's a M Audio, just like one I found at Goodwill for like 15 bucks, right? It does the job. I don't need something fancy right now. Um, just because I do like the tactile experience when it comes to instrumentation.
Yeah.
If I'm sampling, I think I tend, and especially with drums, I think I tend to go with the machine because as a drum pad, I think there's like a rhythm and like a drum feel that you can get with that you don't really get on a MIDI keyboard. Um, and I think you can groove better. I think with other things like that's why I started buying all these instruments. It's I want to like have a tactile element to it and like figure it out. And then if I have to draw it in, but at least I know now what I'm going for and what it should relatively sound like, right? Or it's if it's the bass, I'll just play it in, right? Because I can play the bass relatively well. I have a trumpet. I'm not that great at trumpet, but I can like play on the trumpet, like, okay, that's generally what I want, and then go actually program it in or something. Um, but that's a long-winded answer to say I kind of use a tool based on what I'm trying to achieve and what I feel the most comfortable with.
I noticed that trumpet back there. I'm a fellow trumpet player myself.
Are you? You're probably
Yeah.
better than me.
Uh, I'm trying. Well, here's the thing. I played when I was in high school and
Okay.
middle school, and after like high school, I sold my trumpet. So
Mm,
about 2 years ago, I ended up buying another trumpet, and
nice.
it's like I want to get back into it, and I haven't really implemented that into any of my music yet. I'm just still kind of I'm not comfortable right
Yeah.
now with what I do, but yeah, who knows? I'll maybe do something. In fact, I may do something soon with it to because it's been sitting there, like I said, for 2 years, and I want to have it a part of my music in some way.
Yeah.
But like kind of going back to Machine, man. Yeah, I mean, for me, it's so funny. We got to talking about MPCs and then Machine, and initially how I got into Machine was before that I had a MPC 2000 XL. The Mac I was using at that point in time also I was using Logic, but that Mac ended up one morning I woke up, hit the power button, blue screen. It was done at that point.
Damn.
So I had a
That's the
choice to make.
worst.
Yeah, a horrible decision. Uh, but I ended up selling my MPC 2000 around that time to buy another Mac. And
Mm,
for a little bit, it was only like Logic and then Reason. And at that time, it was around 2010 or so. And that was a time when Native Instruments was kind of making their come up. And
mm,
I saw Machine and I had to get into it because it reminded me a little bit of the MPC at that time. And it was the first like program that was separate from a MIDI controller that you could actually use together with.
Mm,
And I ended up getting into that, did that for as long as I did. And then at the beginning of the pandemic, I was at home working a lot of the time and noticed again Akai came out with the MPC one and I had to get back into it. So um, I like the fact that they kind of made their ecosystem similar to Native Instruments to where you could use it with the MPC app or the
mhm.
standalone if you want to just use your MPC standalone. Though I think software wise, I think Maschine software is better. I will
Yeah,
say that. But
yeah.
uh yeah, I love it. I have so much invested in Maschine, and I don't think there will be a time where I will not use Maschine. Because that's like over 10 years worth of like expansions, how I have everything organized and just knowing the workflow. So I think I'm always use Maschine. But MPC, I like that because it's just a standalone device. I don't have to use a computer and I can create,
Mhm.
and I could still even arrange my songs either on here, or if I want to import it into my iPad, I can do that as well. So you have any like experience making beats on iPad or just mainly?
No, no, I don't. I know that there's quite a bit of samplers and programs coming out, which I probably just need to check out. Because I guess that would be interesting in terms of that on the go in between priorities or things like, oh, I came up with an idea or there's some thing I want to sample. Like, let me just do it real quick on this. I know
Yeah.
Ableton kind of has something similar that they've been developing and putting out this concept around. I think it's called like live notes or something.
Oh yeah, yeah, I
Um,
heard about that. Yeah.
yeah, but but no, I've never created on an iPad.
Okay, yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, it's definitely changing. I'll probably say like a good place to maybe look if you're into sampling. Koala samplers, like $5,
Yep.
I believe, but that's probably the
Oh,
one of
that's
the
it.
best samplers. Beatmaker 3. I like that one because it reminds me of an MPC as far as the sampler and how you chop and edit
Okay.
your samples in the Beatmaker 3. And then most recently, Logic Pro on the iPad.
Mm,
Now, the only thing with that is it's it's a membership, or I won't say a membership, but a subscription.
okay.
Um, $5 a month, or it's like I think $100 a year. But it's dope. Everything, it's what we've been asking for years on the iPad. But um, I don't like really subscriptions. I mean, I am subscribed to it, but I won't say I use it as often as I should, so I can't really warrant the subscription. But one of the things I will say as far as the sampler, I do like the sampler because it's the same one that they have on their desktop version of Logic. So load your sample, they have the auto chop, or if you want to kind of do it your way, of course you can do it that way. But the factory sounds as well inside of Logic. I really like uh that library. So I would
Yeah.
definitely probably look into those three if you're looking into getting into iPad music production.
Yeah. No, thanks for that. I've definitely heard of Koala Sampler quite a bit. Actually, when I guess like a year ago now, when I was starting on Instagram and really pushing stuff out there, I came across it because there's some. It may be Koala Sampler, like their channel. They host kind of like a weekly beat battle or something like that. So I started checking that out. That's how I came across that. But I'll give it a try. Why not?
Yeah, there's another guy. His name is Impression. I don't know if you're following him or not, but
Mm.
he he's like probably one of the best content creators when it comes to like making koala content, and he does a lot of beat battles and things like that. But he pretty much gained his following just from the beat making videos he posted from Koala, and I think that's pretty cool because I've seen that journey. Like when he had 2,000 followers, now it's like I think it's over 15,000. So it's like
Oh, wow.
he really blew up off of just the the koala sampler itself. So that's a good resource. But there's a ton of other great creators when it comes to koalas. So yeah,
Oh,
man,
for
definitely.
sure.
So speaking of like content creation, I noticed that you're also pretty active in a lot of what you do. And that's one of the other things as a fellow creator that I can appreciate for one, because I know that isn't easy as well. You talk about all the
No.
things we already discussed, but in addition to creating the content, um, how would you say, whether it's growing your brand, whether it's getting other opportunities or, whatever that looks like, but how has the content that you put out on social media helped you as a music creator?
Yeah. I mean, it's such an interesting question. I think it's very layered, right? I think so my immediate response is to say I think it's growing my brand, right? I mean, I didn't have a brand before I started creating content, and now I do to a certain extent. And I mean, and you mentioned this earlier, like it brought you to want to have this podcast chat with me, right? So I think it helps in terms of building more connections. I think I'm at a point now where the content that I'm creating, it's not going viral, right? So it's not building this massive network of new followers and getting me opportunities, right? But I think it's all just a piece to the puzzle, right? Putting out the content is just doing marketing on social media, right? At the
Yeah.
end of the day. And I think it helps me think through my audience, right? What kind of content do I want to put out, and therefore what kind of brand do I want to create? And that's continually evolving as I create content and get better at it. Or um, I mentioned data before. I actually so this is where it comes in handy that I know how to code and do data science and whatnot. But I created a some code that would essentially go crawl my followers and people that I follow, right? And then it gives me some information back on them just so I can be a little bit more um, or have a better understanding as to who they are and potentially who do they follow, right? And then I also keep data on all the content that I post, right? So if I go post a reel, because I don't think Instagram gives me this data at this grain, but when I post a reel, I'll every hour just keep track of like how many likes and engagement it has, and then compare that to the number of views, right? Because I mean, at the end of the day, just because you get a lot of views on a video doesn't mean people liked your video, right? And so to me, it's important to understand that relationship between the views and the clicks because then I could see like what videos actually perform well in terms of they had 100 views, but 50 people liked it, right? That's
Yeah.
50%, right? But that means if that gets 1,000 views, it's like 500 likes potentially. And it'll sort of decay. But so it so I say all that to say I think it helps me think about my brand and who I want to be as an artist more. And I think that's always a good thing, right? Any great artist in the past and in the future has a brand that they know, whether they spend very dedicated time on it or not, and craft over time, right? Frank Ocean has a brand, Dr. Dre has a brand, um, and they used marketing, performances, and like disseminating content to get to that brand.
That's very interesting. Definitely like you wanna, cause I like what you said about measuring, those results. For example, you mentioned, having 100 likes, or excuse me, having 50 likes with 100 views. And, why can't, as a creator, you take those 50 and maybe next time grow those to 60, 70. But, I noticed even with a lot of the content that I post, because it's led me to other opportunities as well. But like what I also noticed in that engagement piece, I noticed even little things like uh whether or not you post a video that's shot in landscape versus widescreen. Like a lot of stuff I may take over from YouTube, and I notice I may post something that's in a widescreen format, but a lot of the engagement, comments, likes, things like that, you'd be surprised something as small as that, it matters. Now I post a lot of the, video just to get, I guess, more awareness around some of the stuff that I do, but I do notice, little differences like that, where people are engaged more with, something as small as a video that's shot in a full portrait format or landscape format. But also not just that, it even goes down to like the time of the day you're posting. I noticed like earlier in the day, most of my audience is engaged opposed to later in the evening. So, making that app that kind of gives you that data, I think that's actually pretty cool. And now you got me thinking about some of the things that I do and how I'm gonna approach it going forward. So, I definitely appreciate you for that. But I did also want to say, keep on doing what you do because you got a fan here and somebody that really likes what you do. So I did want to tell you that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, it's always and as an artist or a content creator, I think as an artist, I'll just stick with that. Like I so in high school, I was really big into production. I wanted to go full time into music. Then I went to college and I still kind of dabbled in it. But at some point, that voice in the back of your head got to me. It's like, come on, you're really just gonna do music? You go build a career somewhere. And so I did that for 10 years um and I'm just kind of getting back into it because I did have that conversation with myself of, okay, I'm 32. If I just would have stuck with it for 10 years, I would have been better at piano, bass, production, writing, like all these things. So when I'm 42, I don't want to say the same thing. I want to say I did all those things and I'm great at them. So thanks for noticing and just sharing your appreciation for it. I think it encourages me to keep going. Even if I don't blow up and become Jay-Z, it's fine.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. We all got our own space or our own lane, and
Yeah.
yeah, man, just keep on doing what you do. What kind of plans do you have for the remainder of 2023?
Plans. Yeah, I'm working on an album. So I need to I post a lot on Instagram, but I don't really have a lot of songs out, right? So if you're talking about in terms of like a marketing funnel, right? I have a lot in the awareness stage, but I don't have a lot in sort of like the lead capture stage or like the audience cultivation stage because I have nothing there. So and that's just a matter of I am working on these songs to put out, and so that's what I'll be working on. More of
Yeah,
that. Trying to perform more, or just wrap my head around that a little bit more. I mean, as we've been kind of hinting to or saying explicitly, like being an independent artist is not easy. There's so many things you have to think about, right? Unless you want to go fork out money for a manager, distribution, social media manager, content creator, like all those things. Like it takes time. And so just being patient and one day at a time, chipping away at all of it.
yeah, definitely, definitely. You gotta let us know, man, and would love to, have a chat with you about any of the new projects that you got coming out. So, definitely let me know whenever that happens. Where
Okay.
can all of our listeners and our viewers follow you at?
Yeah, I mean, Instagram is really the best way right now. So at the J Henry, and that's the with two E's. So that's the first place. And from there, I'll have a Koji link that'll have like a bunch of other things that you can go follow. There's a couple songs on Spotify, which I'm quite proud about, especially Love More. I think that's one of the first songs that I created and put out. And I'm like, okay, I'm really proud of what I'm saying in this. Somebody else, my friend Meso, produced the beat, and I mean, he's crazy. He's really good. He pushes his beats push me to want to be better at making beats. Um, so it's always good to keep people around like that. But yeah, Thee JHENRY, that's the place to follow.
Go ahead and hit DJ Henry with a follow. Check out some of his music as well, and just his content. You can definitely take something away from, just the hard work that DJ Henry gets in every day. So really appreciate it. And you can follow me on Instagram at d._major music, and listen to new episodes of the Major Music Lounge, not only on all streaming platforms, but you could also listen and watch on YouTube as well. And appreciate everybody that's been supporting. If you're an independent artist or a music producer, would love to chat with you, similar to how we chatted today. Just people that have a passion for music and creating music. So salute to you, Thee JHENRY, and glad to have you on the show. And this has been another episode of the Major Music Lounge podcast. D. Dot and Thee JHENRY, and we are out.
Cruise control turned on as I'm coasting. Never speak on it, put the plan in forward motion. Make adjustments on the fly, you would think I'm coaching. Stick to the plan, look ahead, forward motion. Cruise control turned on as I'm coasting. Never speak on it, put the plan in forward motion. Make adjustments on the fly, you would think I'm coaching. Stick to the plan, look ahead, forward motion. Duck and dodge bullshit, scrambling like a Randall. Audio graffiti through your speakers just like a vandal. Financial and family, be the motivation. Can't work without if you're added too complacent.